Hello, everyone. I'm James Heron, the Executive Director of the Japanese Canadian Cultural Centre, and I'd like to welcome you to the JCCC today. Thank you very much for coming. I just want to say how proud and excited we are to have had the opportunity to participate and to collaborate and to support such an important project as this. I'd also like to thank the NAJC for their very generous support as well. Telling the Japanese-Canadian story for the benefit of all Canadians and now internationally is central to the JCCC's mandate. So we're really, again, very thrilled to be able to tell that story, to deliver it in such a unique and engaging manner as you will see today. So again, thank you very much for coming. I won't take up any more of your time, and I'll pass the microphone over to Mayumi Lashbrook. Thank you very much again.
Oh, I'm finding it really hard not to be emotional. So bear with me. My name is Mayumi Lashbrook. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the co-artistic director of Eris Corpor Contemporary Dance. I am also the choreographer of this work today and a performer. And yeah, so Defined by Bone brings together the muscles of Canadian history, the blood of Japanese ancestry, and the bones of a story written in prejudice. Defined by Bone is a reclaiming of history, contextualizing what is carried forward in our communal mosaic. Woo! Nerves! My maternal grandparents journeyed through the Japanese-Canadian internment with unique challenges and pathways, both leading them to Toronto and ultimately to me. I've come to understand more and more about their experiences through this creation process and connected with my family in new and unexpected ways. I give deep gratitude for their time, energy, and perseverance in sharing their stories. When I consider my family's experience as settlers on this land, I'm drawn to understand those that came before them. I acknowledge that we are hosted on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuits, and Métis people. We give thanks to the nations recorded and unrecorded, acknowledged and unacknowledged, who also share the responsibility of caring for this territory. This sacred land has been the site of dance for more than 15,000 years. I give thanks to the teaching of Indigenous peoples, colleagues, elders, and peers for the ability to dance and celebrate on this land. A couple more things to say, so bear with me. One of the thoughts that has been cycling through my head through this creation process is the repetition of stealing land and resources. This perpetuation still continues to this day and deeply bothers me. That's part of the creation of this piece. In acknowledging this cycle of stealing, I'd like us all to take a breath together and do one simple movement. So I'll show it to you and then we can do it all together. And you can stay seated. Thank you for dancing with me. That comes to me from Denise Fujiwara, who's also the dramaturg for this work. I want to give a special thanks to a couple supporting partners and funders that made this project all possible. Eris Corpor Contemporary Dance, the Japanese Canadian Cultural Centre, the National Association for Japanese Canadians, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the support of the City of Toronto through the Toronto Arts Council. We also, Eris Corporate, just made our Kickstarter goal this morning at 9:30 a.m., so that was a very exciting moment. And I want to acknowledge the beautiful people in the room that supported us through that fundraiser. There are a number of beautiful people who helped today become possible, and I would encourage you to take a second to look at the show notes to see all those folks. What you're about to witness is a work in progress. This means it's not quite finished yet, and it's a really integral moment where you, the audience, is able to give feedback so that the piece can continue its development. We are going to have the critical response process at the end of the showing today. So if you're able to stick around, your feedback would be very valuable in the creation process. For our folks online, you can also drop comments in the chat, and it will be spoken aloud by our stage manager. So anything that you'd like to say, it will be recorded, but for my purposes, so it won't be shared anywhere else. Okay, those were the major notes. Whew, big deep breath. The last thing that I would like to do is share with you where you can sit. So the choice is yours. You have two different choices of how you can view this work. You can sit in the seats that you're in. Great choice. You can stay there. Or you can come sit in the center of the room here where I am. You'll see there's green tape lines. Just space accordingly within that. Try to keep physical distance and keep your mask on. The dancers will be on the outside of you and speaking text. Part of the reason we held today is because we were doing a rapid test to make sure that we were all clear. So if that feels comfy for you and you'd like to witness the work from the center, that would be great. You can also stay exactly where you are. I give you the agency to decide. You can make your choice now.
I've lost my thoughts. Too many to count or keep straight. How is it so quiet and so loud at the same time? Privacy is a luxury in rows of confined space. No one to speak with outside. No one home inside. I can't hear my thoughts. The train screams along its tracks. It's supposed to feel unsettled. The scenery wipes away everything I knew. I never knew my life was so trivial, so slight. I miss my thoughts. The wide world has become so small. Limited space and possibilities and space. I grieve for my spilled energy on social connections, vocations, neighborhoods. What I cared about is gone, or gone for me. Secrets are too thick to be held in whisper walls. The ice seeps in cracks wide, thin defenses.
manipulation, no spying.
We did the right thing. We made choices with good intentions.
But there was so much misinformation.
We did the best we could with the information we had.
Even when our closest ally was being attacked?
We could have been attacked.
How can we trust them?
We trusted the government.
We were at war.
We were vulnerable.
We were terrified.
We were justified.
We were reasonable.
Knee, right. Steady, left. Ichi, one, hey, two, go. 年。1942. 100 mairu. 100 mairu. 100 miles. 23,512 people. Nisen 528 人. Nisen 2,428 people. Nisen 592 nichi. Nisen 592 nichi. 2,592 days. Sen 949 nen. Sen 949 nen. 1949. Zero. 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 No one. Zero.
of the Uyghur people.
Myanmar, the displacement of the Rohingya people.
Gaza, the West Bank open-air prison.
Hong Kong, the detention of Lebanese for the United States of America. Migration, Libya, the refugee
The
camps.
United States.
Nigeria, and the school.
North Korea, the undocumented.
India, the persecution of the non-identical. We will be doing a critical response process, so I'd love to have your input if you're willing to stay and chat about your experience and any feedback. We're going to grab some water and then come back here. Eric, is this, oh, yeah, it's on. So I just want to take a second to acknowledge some people in the room who have contributed to the project. So this is Yobi, our sound designer. Yeah. This is Robin Lacambra, who I feel like your title doesn't ever do you justice. But she's been helping support our safety in this work, knowing that it is so emotionally charged. She's held space for us really beautifully. This is Denise Fujiwara. Oh, sorry. This is Denise Fujiwara. She's the dramaturg and mentor. This is Bradley Ng, one of the dancers. Michaela Demers, also a dancer and producer. Sid Ryan Eilers, dancer and artistic director of Eris Corpor. And Dee Soleza. Please tell me if I'm saying that wrong. Soleza. I practice even. And then we have Jasmine and Omar here from Chimeric Collective. They've been doing the projection design. We have our stage manager, Rose, Eric Chan on live stream, Henry Mack on camera, and Marlo, Marlo Porter, who is doing photography. So thank you, everybody. And I'm sure I've missed people, but that's what I know to do right now. And over to Denise to lead us through the critical response process.
Great. Oh, great, I get a mic. But you don't have a mic, so yes, I'll repeat, and if you could try to speak loudly because of these masks and also because the room is echoey. So this is a work in progress showing, And thank you for coming out, and thank you for staying to share your feedback, because what we're doing here is assisting Mayumi to proceed with the creative process of this work and to develop it even further. So what we're going to do here is a thing called critical response process, which was developed by a choreographer named Liz Lerman in the US. And it's a method that she developed dancers find that we speak in a kind of vernacular and nobody else understands us. And what she did was she was working with elderly people and with shipbuilders, all kinds of different people on choreographic process. And she created this process so that shipbuilders and choreographers and dancers and music people could all speak together and understand each other. So it's a very simple process. It emphasizes speaking in neutral language. So even though we're sharing this information in support of Mayumi's process, it's not about liking or disliking what we saw or that we thought things were good or bad. It's an opportunity to share the information in a more neutral way. However, you will get your point. The process will allow you to get your point across, and I think that she'll understand eventually. You just have to trust in the process. So we go in 4 rounds, and the first part of the process is where you get to say very briefly what struck you, what was memorable, what stood out for you, and nothing is too small or obvious to say. The second round is the artist, the choreographer, and you guys might have a question, or the designers might have a question, and they get to ask you. And it might be based on things that we said in the first round, or it might be based on things that we didn't say in the first round, like how come nobody mentioned this or that? Okay. The third round is or the observers get to ask a neutral question. And then the fourth round is opinion time. And you can say, I have an opinion, would you like to hear it? And Mayumi might say, you know what, I think I have enough information, thank you, but no thank you. Or she might be interested in the opinion. So that's the process. And so here we go. So the first round is statements of meaning. State briefly what struck you, what was memorable, what stayed with you. And again, it could be an image or a sound or a section or a movement or something they said. Nothing is too small. And yeah, and it's in neutral language, okay? And you can just speak out.
Being in the center,
Mm-hmm.
I found a sense of confinement and also intimacy. And I found it really interesting that I could feel the dancing, I could feel
The floor.
banging,
Yeah.
cutting, and that was very thrilling.
Yeah. Good. So the experience of being in the center, the intimacy of it, and the experience, and and actually the visceral sense of the experience. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm not sure if I got this right, but really, very early on, she said something about, I can't hear the voice in my head.
Uh-huh.
Is that, am I correct? Did she say something like that?
Something like that. Yes, it was in the
For some reason,
voiceover.
that struck me as an introvert, that when you're with too many people and you don't have your space and your privacy, that what you lose is the voice in your head and your thoughts. And for some reason, that really struck me. So I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but I noticed that right away.
That's wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Sorry to make you run. I just felt that there were 2 particular points that really, I don't want to say resonate, but really struck home with me. One was displacement, particularly when Mayumi was being picked up or the other dancers were being picked up and moved and placed otherwise. I thought that did a good job of illustrating displacement. And then the other one was the feeling of like chaos or being haggard when the sheets were being pulled over Mayumi and brought back and forth. And I guess your hair did a good job of illustrating just like, you know, this idea of work and just being exhausted. So those were 2 points that I thought were really driven home.
Yeah, some of the things that struck me were just like the imagery. So one particular moment was where you transformed with like you had gone through putting them on your shoulder, and this moment of transformation between the playfulness of folding sheets to the labor of that. And it just really struck me. It felt very meaningful. I was quite moved, actually quite emotional as you continued to move around there. Also, the moment of the sheets coming over you, and the ending moment of just this like deluge of the magnitude of things really struck me as meaningful.
The sense of turmoil and being in the middle and turning as she moved around kind of engaged more in that turmoil from an audience perspective for me. The other thing was the amount of terror that you were able to express. And just quick, also, the burden was really powerful.
The beginning, I liked in the center where, as she was verbalizing things, it was traveling, and there was a point where, like, maybe, there was one point where you're whispering, and I think only me and maybe the gentleman beside me, I heard that initial whisper, and then it got louder, and I liked the way that amplified. And the last scene, as people were bumping into each other and how it started overlapping, I liked that energy and how it built up to, I don't know if that's the eventual end of the piece, but I liked the way that started to build up.
Just building on the sheets, because that really struck me, the use of them and the symbolism, but that delicate folding of the sheet with the audience members struck me as, I was thinking of origami paper and how kind of light that was, and then how heavy it became once she was carrying it.
There were 2 points at which she throws the sheets on the ground. I thought there were interesting punctuation moments where they're thrown to the ground. And there was something powerful in this moment of something's changing there. Something, there's a moment of, okay, we're changing. It was kind of an interesting audio and visceral feeling.
I echo much of the highlights that other folks expressed. One that also stuck out to me was after the sheets were going over you, Mayumi, you still kept on like reacting as if the sheets were still coming for you. And it really, for me, communicated the ongoing ripple effects of intergenerational trauma. Like just because it might not actively be happening to you, you still are in the trauma response. And that I felt was really powerfully communicated.
Okay. Yes. We have some online responses.
Lightbulb Heart said the fabric work reminded them of a blanket exercise, the stealing and reclamation of land. And then also Michael Abe said involving the audience with the numbers was powerful.
Good. Okay. Let's go on to round 2. Now, you may have some, you can, if you have other things that you'd like to add, we can add them as well. But yeah, Mayumi, questions?
Yes, I have a question about the title. I have questions about, or I'm curious about how it resonated with the piece, and if you have other title suggestions. So that's question 1.
Okay, let's, yeah. So anybody got any responses about the title or suggestions for a new title? Yes. Actually, why don't we not mention the title and then see what title would you invent for this? Do you have a? No? So we'll get to your response, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The word bone. So it's interesting. Like it caught my eye when I saw it. I can't remember the whole title now. But
That the title contains the word bone.
yes, and so it's an interesting, powerful word because bones are hidden from view, and so to speak of a bone is to, have sort of a morbid or has some other connotation to it. So it caught my eye.
Okay, so perhaps if nobody, maybe you'll have an idea later and you can text it, email it to us. But yes, so the title of the piece is defined by bone. That's the existing title. But yes, we have questions about it. But so you had a comment about the existing title.
Yeah, so, the title is compelling, and it landed for me when you expressed that first sentence to us, where you said something about muscle, blood, and bone. Like when you said that, something totally changed in my mind about how I was reading into that title. And I guess I would just say the defined part feels like something to unpack a bit, because it contains for me this notion that that's something that's been done for you. So this process of being defined, of talking about rewriting history, retelling stories, having agency in those stories. So just something in that maybe to explore.
Can we ask what the thought was?
You can ask that in the next round. Okay. Yep. Another question? Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, just got a whole list of questions.
No. It's about how to phrase it. I'm curious if there was anything missing in the experience. If there was a flavor that you're like, oh, it'd be really great if it had this. Because as it stands, that is only the ending at this moment. So where it goes from there, I think there's lots of room for suggestions and components that you felt were missing that could come later.
When you were talking in Japanese at the beginning, I think it would have been helpful, I don't speak Japanese, to have projected the English meaning of the words you were using.
Thank you. Yes.
I think it would have been, for me, I think I would have been more present with the other dancers had they had their wardrobe been different. I feel like your clothing is really purposeful, and then it would have been, I think, helpful. Just that I thought it would have been nice if the other dancers, if you all had costumes or were, yeah.
Yeah.
So, especially because of the way we're all sitting around, that the blending was.
Yeah, something to develop in the process. Okay. Yes.
So the ending of this work in process felt to me like it could be the climax of a larger work that has something that comes after, but this felt like a very powerful culmination of something, but perhaps not the end. That's just what I saw, yeah.
Yes, it presents an opening, a new gate, yes. Okay. Yes.
Obviously, this auditorium doesn't have lighting, and I was really thinking about light and light changes to help tell the story.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, I was also thinking, as I was in that inner circle, that it would have been really nice if that was defined. in some way.
Do you have any other questions?
One last question. What era would you say these folks are from? And then what era am I from? Like what time periods did you sense in the work?
Or did you notice anything about time?
I think I only got a sense of time because of the beginning when you guys posed, you stood at the four corners and discussed, I guess, quote unquote, justification of the incident. Only because of that did I get a sense of difference between you two individuals in different time periods, as opposed to like people looking back and finding reasons or justification for it versus the actual individuals that had lived through the experience themselves.
On the subject of time, I thought it was interesting that there was the point in the piece where you went through the chronology and you worked your way through, and having it all compressed was interesting. But at the same time, I sort of feel like, well, haven't we been kind of in those times before and then after in a way? And is there a way that I kind of want the time to be part of what's being portrayed instead of it all being just together? I don't know. Maybe that's I'm supposed to hold that term. I have an opinion, but
yeah, okay.
But you're asking about time.
Yeah. Okay. So now we go into round 3, which is you can ask questions. So you might have been puzzled about something or wondered about why certain choices were made or about the content of the piece. And posing the question is an interesting thing. Mayumi might not have the answer, so she may not answer the question, but the question itself is very valuable, the fact that you had that question. So please, offer questions. Yes?
My question is the relationship with the bed sheets in the beginning. Specifically when you were like raging out with the sheet and you were like whipping it, and I'm just curious. Like it was really compelling to watch. So yeah, I'm just curious about the journey from it being such a like tender, delicate relationship to like yeah.
For sure. Thank you. The bed sheets really came to me originally from, it was a dividing wall in the spaces of the internment camps, and to me that said so much of the transformation that had to happen in these spaces, that a sheet became a wall. And so allowing the sheets to be something that transformed and were used in ways that were unconventional, that, exactly like going through the internment, that you had to adjust and find ways through it. One of the biggest things that I heard from my family was they were just like, oh, you just keep going. Like, don't look back, just keep going, just keep figuring it out. And I was like, yeah, the sheets for me are that figuring out, that shifting and changing. Yeah, thank you.
I had a question about one of those stats, because I was thinking about numbers after you said that. It said something about 2,000 something were outside the district. But honestly, I didn't quite understand the significance of that. Like, so was the other 20x thousand inside, and or like it might be powerful to know what assets were stolen, like, because I didn't know what that really meant.
Did you consider graphically representing any of these numbers, facts and figures and so on, right? It feels like it's powerful information that we're helping us put context.
Yeah, I think you'd asked about just understanding the district. It's that in the 23,000 512 people that were registered as Japanese Canadians at that time, that only those 2,428 lived 100 miles off the coast. So I'm not good at math, but so that subtraction of, I think, 19,000 people roughly were moved. And that's a huge volume of people to move. But I understand how that didn't necessarily resonate the way other things could have. So I very much value that question. Mm-hmm. And graphically depicting sounds amazing. Yes.
No, they moved almost everybody, is the point. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So, yeah, having a pie chart or something might make that clearer.
Yeah, 23,000 people.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to know, because there was a handful of like audience participation type situations, what your mindset, maybe not for each of them, but just in general, what it, like the purpose of maybe having people in the middle or getting an audience member to help you fold the sheets or so on and so forth, and if it would persist, is something you intend to have throughout the piece as it expands and into totality. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I don't know yet. Is the short answer. The longer answer is I am often interested in audience participation and the closeness and intimacy of work. I find that it can be a way of really getting into the experience and knowing how impactful it's been for me to understand more and more about this history. I think the intent was to bring audience into that experience as deeply as possible through this. So that was the initial choice, or initial momentum to bring me to that choice. And yeah, I think as it develops, I'll see what happens. But at the moment, it feels like my character has more interaction and that there is a disconnect between the next generation and the audience. Yeah.
I have a little bit of prior knowledge on something, and that was that my understanding is that this whole thing started because of your grandfather. Wow. If I understand it correctly, you started with one, and you moved through much larger expanding groups up to, at the end, to your point, the idea that it's much bigger than all of us. And my question is, how does this come back around to starting with one?
So it's maybe this question is maybe not for you to like answer right now, but it just was the consideration. Like what I'm curious about is who are you in this piece? And it felt like maybe you are many people, or maybe you are you embodying your ancestors, or maybe you are you in this moment in time trying to tell the story of your ancestors. But it's just a question that maybe there's some richness in that exploration. Like I feel like you hold that somehow in the exploration. But I was kind of left with that question: who are you throughout the piece? Yeah.
Great. Do you want to try and answer? Or those are like really potent, open-ended questions which are valuable in themselves. And yeah. Should we just leave them as open questions? Yeah. But yes, definitely wonderful content, provoking questions.
I found that my experience being in the middle, at first I wasn't sure what I was allowed to do, or it was like a little awkward, and I thought, but as soon as I just started spinning around and participating with you, my experience really changed. It was like, no, I'm turning around. I think no one told me, so, I mean, that's my own thing, but I think sometimes audiences aren't I don't know if you want to say, do whatever you want in there, but I just found my own experience became more powerful as I spun around and followed you, as opposed to, like, am I allowed to turn around?
Right, so a little more direction might help.
Maybe.
Yeah, or
just
cues.
a little cue, like, hey, you're
Yeah.
in the middle, turn around, or not, if you want to experience it. I just heard you was more powerful as I spun around and participated with you while I was on the phone.
And building around this, so I was intrigued by your answer about audience participation, and I really like that part of it. So then I'm wondering, asking myself if I'm remembering correctly, that if I remember correctly, that which prime minister did make a formal apology to the Japanese community? Am I correct in that? Yeah. So I'm wondering if you considered the idea that maybe this is what's the term? That the audience has a chance to personally offer that apology, because it's one thing for a politician to do it, but for us as Canadians to, and the comment was made that no one protested when the internment happened. Like, is there an opportunity now for the audience to engage in this emotion?
Do you want to answer this question?
Yes.
Or is it?
No, more seriously, I think I love that. I'm very compelled by the thought of how do I create the opportunity for an apology. So I don't have an answer in terms of like how do I do that yet, but I acknowledge that that's a really compelling thought that I'm excited to dive into.
I believe the Prime Minister was Brian Mulroney. Yes. Yes. Was it you?
Yep. Yes, that for me was quite an astounding end, where you were commenting 0 protests, 0 people. But having Japanese in-laws, we've talked about this as families, and what the elders always said, because they felt so much shame, and I think that does not come out. That, someone who wouldn't have that knowledge doesn't associate that with a cultural Japanese background, why nobody went to protest.
I just wanted to add to that question because thinking about how ongoing Canadian settler occupation of unceded lands is that I would like to ask the question if that kind of personal interaction and this acknowledgement of shame and guilt is something that is necessarily a thing that can address this idea of collective harm, considering that we all participate in this kind of quote-unquote nation-building process, which is actively engaging in that, considering our individual complacency. So yeah, I just wanted to add to that interrogation of how is that possible as a way of actually addressing intergenerational harm and cultural internment based on settler colonial dynamics.
Thank you. Should we leave that as an open question? Or would you like to? I think that's a thesis there.
These are big.
Wow, we're doing this. I was thinking, and how does that connect to anti-Asian prejudice and violence and in today's society? I know we had the other country atrocities spoken of, but it's not as if this truth and reconciliation process has really happened today. We're seeing so much violence towards Asian people in our culture, too.
Yes.
Yeah. I tried to ask earlier, but I was in the wrong round. I'm curious about the title and what your thinking was there.
Yeah, it's twofold. So the very original seed of the idea was when I move, I often move defined by my bone. I move from a thought of like, where is my bone in space? But like the larger picture of that is when we get down to the bone, who are we really? Are we all the same? Are we all the same color? Yes, like those kinds of things. So it was like the thought of, what do I want to be defined by? Can I be defined by my bones instead of my skin, my eyes, my hair? So yes, that was the thought. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the last round, which is, I have an opinion. Would you like to hear it? I have an opinion about. Would you like to hear it? Yes. We have an online.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to distill this opinion. Okay, this is an opinion about the intergenerational narrative of the piece. Would you like to hear it? Cool. So do you know how to say that last name? Ugichi?
Where is it?
Iguchi?
Oh, Iguchi.
Iguchi, great.
Yeah.
Asks, in this unfolding intergenerational narrative, it might be nice if the bittersweet nature of successful assimilation was more deeply expressed. This is a unique internal conflict that many of us second and third generation survivors carry.
Okay. Any other opinions? Yes.
I have it's loud. I have an opinion about the one of the facts in the projection. I was so compelled that in 1941, all the Japanese had to identify themselves, and how the unfolding of history in that moment, they wouldn't know what was coming potentially, and just how we're constantly in today's society asked to identify ourselves. And yeah, I'm just curious about that in terms of potentially doing in 1941 first, before the 1942 roundup happened, to kind of say like, no, they knew what they were doing when they asked people to identify.
Great, thank you. Any thoughts you'd like to share? Yes.
Just riffing on that idea, if we were asked to identify ourselves, if you're looking for some kind of participation of some kind, I don't know what that means, but, you know, and to feel that and then be
yes,
like,
to have that demanded of you.
yes, in
As
that.
part of the experience.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. Highly offensive. So. Oops, that's my opinion.
I have an opinion and a comment, I suppose, or a question is, as a dancer, how do you translate these ideas and express them through your body to the same extent as you did via the information that you presented, via projection or text or speech? But how do you bring those ideas and put them in the body of your dancers and express those ideas? And how do those ideas affect movement?
Would you like to venture an answer?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, good question, thank you.
I have an opinion about your relationship to the ensemble. Would you like to hear it? So I felt that perhaps there is an opportunity to create a powerful connection in the juxtapositioning of you and the ensemble. Like the way I interpreted the ensemble is as a kind of societal type voice, societal type like group acting on you. And I found that there were some moments where those things happened together and other times, like at the beginning, where there was a succession. And I thought that could be interesting to see, for example, what I felt was a kind of vulnerability at the beginning juxtaposed with the expressed opinion of society of justifying action, so that we can potentially see more clearly the contrasting narratives of history. Like, what is your narrative as what I think we're seeing as the experienced, the one who has experienced this history, and then the interpretation or justification of that history. So, because my opinion is that when we see it in succession, there is potentially a preciousness about the vulnerability that is less powerful than if we were to see it in contrast to this accepted historical narrative that is acting on you simultaneously. So that's my opinion. Thank you for hearing it.
Great, thank you.
I have an opinion on potentially building on the choreography to tap into the comment that was shared by the person online, if you'd like to hear it. I was really struck by the assimilation thing, especially since like my mom really raised me to be like, you be good so that white people will like you. Yeah. And that programming. And so, you know, that part of the piece where the ensemble is like physically moving you, if that transforms into a moment of unison movement with each other, where they're no longer moving you, but you're all like it's a like you're all moving in unison, but they're no longer forcing it, and you're like the model minority, good Asian woman, following the footsteps of what the white people laid out for you, might capture that assimilation model minority thing that's very true of our current experience.
Great. Thank you. But it does happen. I mean, yeah, that was the rule.
Exactly, and that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what's the alternative? I
Yeah.
think is the question I'd love to answer
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, right? We can figure it out.
We'll figure it out one day, right?
Well, we're working on it now, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
Yes, good. So, thank you everyone for your sharing and your generosity in staying and sharing your thoughts and experiences and opinions. So, it's all very useful. I'm going to hand this back over to Mayumi.
I don't think I have anything else to say except thank you. Your generosity in what you experienced and sharing that with me really helped shape the next steps. So I take that, with a lot of gratitude. So thank you. Oh, and I mean, you can follow Eris Corper on social media. You know, a little plug there. AERIS KORPER. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and then we have a website. So this is an Eris Corper production. So we'd love to continue to connect. This piece will have a final showing, final presentation. So please keep in contact with us to find out when it'll happen. We'd love to have you there. Thank you.
Did you want to speak?
So just on behalf of the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center, I'm Teresa Takasaki. I'm our Archive and Collections Manager here. We were very, very happy and very, very proud to partner with Eris Corper on this production. And we want to thank you all for being here. We know with the world situation right now, coming out to an event like this is something a little bit daunting. So we were very excited that it was in person as well as live streamed. While you're here today, if you want to learn more about the Japanese Canadian experience, we do have our Maru Immigration Stories exhibit up in our Moriyama Nikkei Heritage Center, which is just off to the left on your way out. And then, because we've actually opened, our gift shop is open, so we're more than happy to have you look around there. But once again, we were very excited to partner. We're very proud. It was an exciting performance to watch. Thank you very much.